and that is with our regional events. And I just want to welcome David Burt, the manager for our events, and I'll move it. So for discussion, can I get a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Mr. Chair. Councillor Mulholland.
Thank you, Tracy. So it's been moved and seconded and open for discussion. So I'll invite David Burt. And if you have any of your staff with you, David, please introduce them. Thank you.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair, and kia ora to councillors. It's my job to present the recommendations for you to consider on the Regional Event Fund grants allocation for this financial year. To assist me, I've got David McIntosh, who's our Senior Advisor Events. David took the lead in administering this fund and assembling all the information and leading the staff assessment committee. So David will be is also online to answer detailed questions. Just in a brief form of introduction, as you've just heard in the previous item, that in this year of COVID implications, the decision has been made to reduce the regional event fund allocation from 600,000 to 400,000, and that we would only have one round this year, not the usual two. The round opened on the 17th of July and closed on the 28th of July. Now, the reason for that very truncated period of just almost 10 days was that the feedback from the events and festival community was, could council please make some decisions before Christmas, so events that were due to be held in November, December had some certainty, and generally council doesn't fund the lion's share of any event. They need to go out and confirm that council had some skin in the game so they could go back to the commercial community for other support. So that meant that we only had those 10 days, and David and the team really worked hard in consulting organisers and doing the assessments in a short period. The end result is that we had 36 applications and we're recommending 32 for grants. We did note that some events that have been regularly supported through the regional events grants are not happening this year. Coca-Cola Christmas in the Park, the Japan Day, the secondary schools Kapa Haka and the Highland Gathering. So they were not withdrawn. As you can see in the area of paragraph 32, we've assessed that some applications are recommending reduced funding, often because in previous years, like the track and field Sir Graham Douglas and the Puanui horse trials, they were having international competitors and higher costs. So we think they can survive for slightly less. The Tempo Dance Festival is moving to a digital format. And the Aotearoa Māori Sports Awards requested less. We've only recommended 4 be declined. That was Te Rama, which is receiving substantial ATEED funding, the Someday Festival, which is also eligible for Creative New Zealand, Bean Rock, which was a swim, which is a new one. We have other swim series, and the youth community one wasn't really a regional style event. So look, that's our recommendations to you as councillors to consider. And as I said, David is here to answer more detailed questions about our assessments and in particular about any event you would like clarification on. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and also to your team. Thank you with the earlier conversation once the emergency budget was set. In regards to getting applications and getting the events that our community can attend. So thank you for the work of your team. Councillor Bartley, I know there was a question because you having difficulty around the technical side of things. So if you're online, do you wish to ask the question that you put into the chat box, or do you want me to ask David of it? Okay, look, David, it appears that Councillor Bartley is having issues. So look, her question in the chat box is that, what is the analysis that the officers went through regarding communities that need us most, and funding to regattas, horse trials, exterior challenge, which charges for entrance, show jumping, etc. That's one question, and then there's another one as well. David?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we've taken all of those elements into account, and as Graham Bodman alluded to earlier, that's the communities in need. We also reflect on terms of the criteria that has been long established in the events policy and the priorities under the events area, which is is outlined in terms of youth, Māori and others, and also trying to achieve some activity in the winter. So we have tried to achieve a balance between sporting events, cultural events, community events, and also tried to balance a geographic distribution across the region. So we do try to take all of that into account, and in the end, those are our recommendations as professional advisors, and now to be debated by councillors.
Okay, the other question here is, I've got, is there contingency for the economy, and also contingency if events get cancelled in time due to COVID? Can the funds be either refunded? But my understanding is they won't go out until they actually have the funds, David.
Yes, that's the approach, and we will be extra zealous this round, given the uncertainties of what levels we be at as to whether events can proceed or not, and we will have to have clawback clauses in any grant contracts that we enter into.
Okay, thank you. I will then move into questions and comments. I think it'd be easier if we did that instead of going backwards and forwards. So I got first off is Councillor Casey.
Hello. Can you hear me all right, Alfie?
Yeah, and David can as well.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. My comment relates to, usually I have to declare an interest at this particular funding meeting because I'm patron of the Auckland Highland Games Association. But sadly, the Highland Games have become one of the casualties of COVID, and it's simply, there's just not enough time frame to put on the 45th Highland Games. But the good news is it's been scheduled for the 20th of November 2021. So I know you'll all be pleased about that. My question relates to the diary of events that we fund, David, and I think it's really important for committee members to try and get along to funded events and report back. So it's whether you can possibly provide the committee with a list of the dates for all these funded events, and be accepting of feedback from councillors who may be in attendance.
Yes, that's a very good idea, Councillor Casey, and we can supply that as a calendar. I can assure the councillors that between David and myself and other staff, we do try to attend all of these events, and I think personally I went to at least half of them last year, and it's useful to be there to get that experience, to get feedback from people that are attending in the community, and to be able to discuss the implementation of the event and what organisers are thinking. So yes, I'd encourage that, and we can supply that calendar.
Sorry. Thanks, David. And just because I can actually talk about the Highland Games, if you haven't ever been, make sure you go along next year, because it is a fantastic cultural experience.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Casey. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Councillor Casey. I attend the Highland Games on a regular basis because they are at the Ellerslie Racecourse. I have been recently anyway. I have two questions, David. My first question is general and my second is more specific. So my general question is, will the contracts for funding these regional events all have clauses in them so that if the event does not happen as their request was, that we get our money back?
Well, that's our intention, and we will be working to do that. It's always a tad difficult as to when the event is cancelled and how close it is to the actual date. Sometimes there is legitimate expenditure, often things like planning for traffic management, road closures and what have you. They've had to pay out to consultants earlier, and so some money has often been spent, and that's especially the case of like this year, the poor Polyfest organisers. It was cancelled virtually the weekend before, so there was a lot of expense had gone out. But if there's a longer time period, yes, we should be able to recover most of that, and we will be putting those clauses in and working very closely with our contract administration and purchasing teams to get the right contracts and legal requirements into those. Very important this year.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, because obviously that's important to the finances of Auckland Council, so I appreciate that. My second question is a little bit more specific, and I beg the Chair's indulgence, and it's just the difference between the Swim the Shore and the Beam Rock event. Can you just tell me why Swim the Shore was the one that was chosen? Does it have more attendees? Is it cheaper? I just kind of, I'm interested in the volume of people that attend. That's all. The reasoning for you to choose one over the other.
Yeah, the Bean Rock is a new event, and so it certainly sounds really exciting. Swimming out and around such an iconic. I was going to say landmark, it's a watermark. And perhaps David McIntosh, who has analysed them all, could give me a bit more detail about numbers. David, are you available?
Kia ora koutou. In terms of the decision making regarding those events, we basically, it was because they're both part of the same series, and we'd previously funded the Swim the Shore event, and we proposed to continue funding that rather than switch to the alternative swim event. So that was primarily the focus we had in looking at our funding this year, was continuity of support to event organisers. So it would have really just been we were in a position to really fund additional events easily, and in this case it would just have been a switch of funding for that organiser from one event to another.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor,
Apologies, you're very hard to hear on my line.
yeah, I was just going to ask whether you got that, Councillor Simpson.
No, but I just have to accept that it was an answer. Sorry, I couldn't hear it.
David, can you get back to Councillor Simpson after this meeting, please, just to sort of clarify that, because you sounded like Snoop Dogg, a rapper. So yeah, in the beginning part. So, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I guess some of the questions I had about money, because it's not just COVID this year. We had the mosque shootings the year before, where quite a few events were cancelled, and we've honestly got no certainty about next year as well. And I guess I just wanted to be a bit like Councillor Simpson, reassure that there's a mechanism to get as much money back as we can if things are cancelled. I know out west, Diwali and places like that, they've had to pay in advance and they can't get the money back and all that. So it happens, but I've sort of somewhat reassured around that. The other question was around, when I'm looking at the figures for things like eventing, Pride, and then things like athletics, and I think about, okay, Pride, yes, that's great, but there's been such uncertainty around that in the last few years as well, and that's a lot of money. And it's sort of kind of not very child oriented. Horse trials, similar. And then you've got something like athletics, amateur athletics, which involves a lot of different ages and anybody. It's all comers, and it's getting 5,000. I kind of, just in my head around community, it just doesn't seem a lot. I just wondered, not many people can go to the horse trials.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are interested whole region in Pride, but things like athletics, wherever they're held, are something that a lot of people access.
Yeah. Yes, Councillor Cooper. It's always difficult. Assure you, we're recommending supporting the Pride Festival, and that's the festival element, not the parade. So there's 3 or 4 different events within that for the rainbow community.
That's great then. That's reassuring, because we've had a few issues with parades, so that's great. No, I kind of understand that. That's good.
Yes, and it is surprising. I've, along with a number of other councillors, have attended the Puanui horse trials. I can assure you there's hundreds and hundreds of people attend that.
The day I went, there was no one. We're all, and the amount of money spent on the VIP tent was extraordinary. I don't think that needs to happen if we're paying for that. Right. I went there, and I think there was Councillor Cashmore and his wife, and that was about it.
Okay,
people at all, but anyway.
Yeah, well, I might have gone on a better day, and I was a bit surprised. And that's the balance, and there's other events that are orientated towards family and children, such as Santa Parade and other things. So, look, it's a balance that we've evaluated and again put to you as councillors for decision. So I suppose it's really up to you at that point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Walker and then Deputy Mayor.
Hi, Alf, you hear me okay?
Yeah, no problems at all, my mate.
Okay, so I've just got a question that's further to the issue that Desley raised about quite obviously ability to get reimbursed because of COVID and other events. And my question goes like this: Is it possible to have some form of template that would go to risk mitigation into the future around event planning? Because quite obviously we've got risks attached to COVID according to levels. And if you're planning an event, quite obviously, if you can reduce your commitments or have clauses around commitments so that you've got escape clauses. If you can look at timing in terms of expenditure, you're better able to be flexible if something crops up. And I would suggest, certainly in respect of the COVID climate and the risk attached to a shift from level 1 to 2 to 3 or the like, that we really need to look to mitigate these things. So just invite a response around that. Thanks.
Yes, Councillor Walker, it's a very good point, and I think it's been made quite strongly by the councillor group. So we will be looking into that in some detail as we negotiate with the various event organisers and come up with the contracts. So I think what we will need to do is to get a bit more professional advice on that in the clauses in the contracts, and can advise you accordingly. I'm not sure if David, you prepare a lot of those contracts, whether you want to add anything at this stage.
I think it's largely going to be sort of work outside the contracts. It's in the process of monitoring what the status of the event. We have clauses in the contracts which cover return of funds that aren't spent on the event. And so it's really, the challenge is actually going to be to look at that whole process of timing of work that's occurring on an event, and at what point the organisers are committing funding to various aspects. It's the same issue that we will be addressing in delivery of our internal events, council events that we deliver. So it's
I would.
Okay then. Look, thanks, Councillor Walker, and it's obviously been noted as well. I'll move, and this is the last question that I'm seeing in the chat box, and that is to Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Hi, David. Just looking with the Puanui International Horse Trial, the number of people, and it's particularly young girls, who participate in equine events around Auckland. Do you have that tally by any chance? Not here.
I haven't got any figures on that.
So, well, I just can't recall a figure. What I do remember is that it is the second most popular recreational activity for young women in Auckland. I thought the figure was like 120,000, but I stand to be corrected there.
Yeah.
And I note Councillor Cooper's comments around attendance. I was there with my wife that particular one, but the other events I've been to there have been very, very well attended, and I have seen you there over at least 2 or 3 times, David, I think, over the years. So it's a very popular event. It's well attended, particularly by the people who are participating over the days that it's run. So I strongly support the continuation of that funding for that activity.
Yes, I'm with you, Councillor Cashmore, that it is, the times I've been, it's been very popular and a great range of people. And I think it's also important that, given the geographical spread of Auckland, that we do support our rural communities as well. And it's an event that is much loved.
Okay then, look, thank you. And it has been moved and seconded. If there's no further questions, I've got none in the chat box.